So my name is Jacek. I direct Elastic Theatre, and so today, the idea for today is that we present to you some of the concepts behind this project. It's a very exciting project for us. In a second I'm going to introduce the full team, and I suppose one of the things I was going to say about this project, the event today, is that we're trying to use this also as a way to get audiences' feedback, to get some questions, because Julius is very much a piece that's going to continue to be developed right into summer of 2013, so it's very exciting, and obviously we want that sense of feedback from the audience and any questions that you want to ask. So the project is funded by the Wellcome Trust and by Jerwood Charitable Foundation, who've been involved not only financially but also, I would say, creatively as well in the project. It's been fantastic. And also this exhibition is funded by GV Art very kindly. I particularly have to thank Robert Devcic, who's the director of GV Art, and Francis Sampaio, who's the assistant. Is that the name? That's good, lovely. And has been great at making all of this happen. The event today concludes a series of events that we've been doing alongside the film that some of you have just seen. And as a series of events, we wanted to give us many different experiences for the audience. So in one event, for instance, last week, we talked specifically about the issues of obsessive-compulsive disorder. So as you saw, as some of you saw, there is obsessive-compulsive disorder is really important for this piece. And there's some autobiographical aspects about it for myself, but also it's a very interesting theme, I find. So that was the theme of our event last week. We then did a workshop in which Rachel Gaston, who's the artist behind the creation of these wonderful artworks, she was doing an artwork, making a new artwork, an original artwork, live during our voice workshop, which was fantastic as an experience. But I have to say, I've been really looking forward to this particular event because we're going to give you lots of different experiences. So, as you saw, there's the experience of the film, but if that weren't enough, you got this. A chance to talk about these ideas and to see the performance live that I'm going to introduce in a second. And if that weren't enough, there'll be a little gift, a performance gift in the courtyard that I hope you'll enjoy. And if that weren't enough, there's some free wine, and I find that it always helps with appreciating contemporary art. In order of appearance, I'm going to first of all introduce the cast. Can the cast come out, please? And so you see them in their wonderful costumes. There you go. I think we should have a round of applause. I'm going to say a little bit about each one of them, just a couple of little information. So first of all, we start with Adam Kirkham, who's playing the title role in Julius, and Adam has just come back from a tour, international tour, with Marisa von Stockert, the choreographer, which has been great. Then who else do we have? We've got Chiara Danna, who's you may actually see at the Curzon Cinemas now. If you go and check out this film called The Barbarian Sound Studio, yeah? And you see Chiara featuring in that, so it's a great film if you can see it. Also, Chiara's just come back from Edinburgh with her company Panta Ray. Then we have Joachim Chocker. Now this is an interesting one because thank you, very interesting. Joachim has come all the way from Switzerland. I'd love to say that he came with on his unicycle from Switzerland, but he didn't. It was Ryanair. And Joachim, not only is he great at what he does, but he's the silver world champion on the unicycle. So there's all right, then we have Maya Sapone, the soprano. There you go, and give us a soprano face. And so Maya's just come back from an acclaimed international tour of The King and I. And then we have Nicolas Simer in the most unlikely priest you'll ever find, I would say. But Nicolas just, I have to say, a lovely collaboration he's doing with Jan Fabre, the choreographer, multimedia artist, and he's in his company at the moment, so it's great. Yeah, there you go, perfect. In the meantime, let me also introduce other people, of course. With any one of these projects, there's always a bit of backstage work, which is just as important. And the first two people I'm going to mention belong to a company that works with us, and you saw it in the first slide of the projection that it said Savage Mills, in collaboration with Savage Mills. So Elastic Theatre is our performance company, working specifically for this project with Emma Savage and Ernest Mills, and if you raise your hands, there you go. And can I just say, a round of applause for the filming of this, because it's there we have Ivan Hussey, who's playing here, and you see, wait till you hear the music, because it's going to be fantastic. Ivan will also play later on, so just now in this part, he's just going to give us a little taste of what he's going to do later on. Ivan has his own band, Cello Man, and they've, aside from international achievements, he's also been recently featured on BBC Radio 3 for a programme dedicated to Cello Man, so that's great. And after that we've got Nadia Malik, and that's the last one. And no, there's another one. Nadia Malik, our designer. Raise your hand, Nadia. There you go, lovely. And designer of the costumes, designer of the sort of illustrations in the film, and something on Nadia. So Nadia is now the head of costume at the East 15 Acting School, as well as being a freelance designer in her own right. And lastly, Ludovic de Cunier. I hope I pronounced that well, did I? Oh, no. There you are, there you go. And he's waving there, wave a bit more so people can see him. So, and Ludovic is the person, the master photographer behind those lovely pictures that you saw in our exhibition connected to Julius. So first of all, I'm going to explain why the company is called Elastic Theatre. I founded this company in 2001. But at that point it used to be called Vocal Motions, because it was about mergings between voice and movement, and as opposed to creating interdisciplinary projects. I then later on, at some point, I think it was 2007, that we started to see that there was something more about the interest between using, say, vocal music and dance, and it became more about creating a type of performance that could be elastic in all sorts of different ways. I think there are three particular ways that I like to think of it as being elastic. The first one is how we merge different disciplines. So as you see from a project like Julius, that we merge things like acting, vocal music, opera, physical theatre, circus, dance, etc. So it's the fusion of these disciplines that in itself is part of our elastic ethos. We're not an all-singing, all-dancing type of company. It's not about creating work of that kind. It's more about seeing how an opera singer, for instance, relates to a contemporary dancer and see what comes out of that. Do you see what I mean? So that's one element. The other element is the way that we create our stories, because our stories, the narratives behind our work, always draw on different elements, often from different or previous legends or myths, and we take them, we stretch them, we readapt them, and always we keep evolving them. So, for instance, you see that what some of you have just seen in Julius is just chapter 1. Chapter 2 will be then made just after that, and then maybe chapter 3 and maybe more. Let's see. But that's part of the idea. And finally, the staging. These pictures are taken from our last project called Baroque Box, which was also funded by the Wellcome Trust. Baroque Box was about exploring the artist's as sort of an imaginary Baroque artist's mind and merging his imagination with the issues of science of the 17th century. And as you can see, you know, it's always, in terms of the staging of our work, it's always a bit unusual. And I suppose that leads me to why we came about with the idea of creating Julius. And I think the best way to describe it is that it's an immersive film, and I hope that those of you that have seen it hopefully you'll agree that you see the attempt here to create a film that gives you a theatrical experience, and in a sense, to the extent the film can do it, a live experience. And that's why the idea of creating an unusual sort of triple screen type of film. Which leads me to asking Emma, if there's anything that you want to say from a filmmaker point of view about this.
Okay. Well, this has been a very exciting and challenging experience for us as filmmakers. Aside from the usual creative challenges you face when telling a story through film, we faced a huge amount of challenges through telling a story through 3 synchronized screens. So that threw up a huge amount of practical challenges. We started the process, as we always do, storyboarding. And usually this is a really useful process in, sort of deciding creatively how you're going to tell a story, how camera angles and framing is going to affect you emotionally. But actually what this really proved to be helpful with actually on the day was as a sort of Bible of exactly what was happening on each screen at each time. And it certainly helped us on the shoot, but no matter how hard you plan or something like this, with 3 screens you're never going to have an easy edit. So the only way I think to make it really, really simple would be to have playback and have the actors responding exactly to the videos as they come along. But in order to make the conversations work together, we had to do a lot of very difficult sort of slowing down things very slightly, speeding things up very slightly to make everything synchronized perfectly, finding very sort of subtle ways of editing scenes so that they flow together and so that the scenes hopefully interact in a kind of seamless sort of way. Do you want to talk a little bit about some of
Really? I didn't know you were going to do that now. I did that, but it's really difficult. But no, all I will say is I don't really talk about the creative processes, not to be pretentious, but half the time I don't know kind of what I'm doing. I might be working unconventional hours at 4 AM or 5, 6, 7, and I won't kind of remember, so I'll be in the moment kind of editing, but I knew like we had to make it look beautiful, and we did the best job we could with that. And also looking at OCD and compulsion, kind of using that as a kind of DNA reference point for the rhythm of the editing as well as the performances from the artists themselves, who are extremely talented, so you didn't need much props, you had a desk, it was a black background, but I made it even blacker to kind of bring them out further, and the performances speak for themselves, so in a way I feel like we didn't have to work too hard, but yes, there's a lot of sort of technical post-production things that I had to introduce to the edit, but the main thing was really sort of following the rhythm of the performances, as well as the incredible music by Ivan Hussey as well. So really, I think that speaks for itself. The 3-dimensional space, there's a few effects that I use, I could talk about that. But I really like an audience to kind of look at something and not know exactly how it was done.
So little things like the sort of mirroring or folding effect on the dance, as to kind of represent, we really want to find ways to draw out the ideas about OCD in a visual way. So the kind of idea that he's separating, trying to bring him back to himself, and the kind of internal struggles is very...
Yeah, it's internal struggles, so more serious stuff here. There were methods used, and as I said, rhythm was a very important part of it, and that was because it was part of the illness in a sense, was the compulsion. And it's interesting because in a sense, in chapter 1 that we had made with Elastic Theatre, which was a presentation of Julius, we worked with Jacek and the cast. Really at the inception of Julius and the idea and the concept and the story behind it, and it developed narratively, and it's interesting because initially when we filmed the first chapter, there was a lot of handheld. We'd like to follow the dancers, to follow the movement, but in the edit it became quite erratic, and it was after seeing this kind of phase we decided that it was a little too erratic, wasn't it? Yes.
Definitely.
Really, it's about structure. And trying to find some structure in your life to make sense of things and to control things.
Now, as we go on with this presentation, let me just give you a little bit of a context behind it. So the concept, as some of you saw, it's about triggers, it's about obsessions, and it's about compulsions. I'll give you a little bit of an autobiographical bit to the story. Cue the sad music now, as in. I was diagnosed with. No, this is serious. I really was diagnosed with OCD, and I'm very happy to talk about it. And it's something that I still need to work on. It's definitely not one of those things that suddenly vanishes. But it was important for me at some point to think, how can something like OCD be transformed into something that actually can be positive and kind of inspiring? Because in a way, it tells us a lot about how the brain works in some sense. So, and I suppose I had some memories in my sort of childhood, and of this kind of OCD type of memories. And I think the one that I can recall the most. Now, I won't mention one that I mentioned last week in our discussion on OCD, because just in case you came to that as well, I want to keep the material fresh. But this was. No, I was raised. I'm half Polish. Half Italian, so that's a lot of Catholicism for one person, and with that there's a lot of sense of guilt. And as I grew up, I was raised in Rome, so there's lots of Baroque churches in Rome. They're beautiful, it's great, they're inspired, the Baroque boxes, etc. But one of the things that you find is there's a lot of naked people in the paintings in those Baroque churches. And I remember when I was 7 that I was, I started to become aware about the naked people represented in the paintings in these churches. And I started to think, what if I, during Mass, what if I started to get distracted, and is that a sin? And I started to have this kind of internal dilemma, which Catholicism is great at, inspiring. And I started to think, is there, and I started to create sort of certain compulsions. For instance, every time I would try to neutralize the naked person on the in the painting that I would see. So I would get distracted by the painting, try and neutralize it with some sort of prayer. And obviously, the more in the meantime, as I was saying a prayer, I would then look more and more for more naked people, because obviously my brain started to be more obsessed with not looking. And I'm sure that you've all experienced the feeling that sometimes if you try not to think of something, that thing will happen again in your mind. And so I think maybe that could be an interesting point to start a story like Julius, which leads me to the concept of OCD. So just so you know that there's a lot, I won't go into details today about this, because that was the theme for last week. But I think I think it's important to give a bit of context to the fact that we work with the specialists in obsessive compulsive disorder, and I think it's very important, particularly because if I write something that has some element of myself, it's really healthy to have somebody else tell you, actually, other people experience this as well. Because I think the risk is to go into very self-indulgent, navel-gazing type of things. So I think that's why. So we have a team of psychiatrists that work with us. Simon Darnley, Dr. Erin Sullivan, who's actually a medical historian, who's sort of giving us ideas about the concept of obsession and the history of obsession. Then Dr. David Veal, Dr. Wojciech Wojcik. Also, we work in collaboration with OCD Action, which is the national charity for OCD, and with Bethlehem Museum. And we've got the director of Bethlehem Museum here, Victoria, if you raise your hand to be seen. And so that's great. So it's really important for us to say this, because it's important that to give a sense of context that we are genuinely passionate about research. And of course, I'm sure that many of you will see that the film is not an educational film. It's not about teaching what OCD is, but equally it should still be informed by certain ideas about OCD. So, now, we started to play with This Is the Moment Where the Live Performance Comes In. In a second, I'm going to ask Nicola and Adam to give us a little demonstration, because one of the things that we started to play with, as we started to discuss with these psychiatrists about ideas about OCD, we started to play with how can we theatricalize the concept. So, for instance, starting from the concept of a trigger, So, going back to my story before, the trigger was the painting with the naked people in it. And then the trigger led to a compulsion, an obsession. The obsession was, if I keep looking at it, I'll that action is a sin, basically, so I feel dirty, etc., etc. The compulsion is to say some sort of prayer that neutralizes that initial trigger. Except that the compulsion just reinforces it, and that's the vicious circle of OCD. And I'm sure for many of you there's a similar experience, because I think for me it's really important to say that OCD is not a black or white area. There's a lot of grey spaces, and I'm sure to some extent each one of us experience elements of that. So, if I just call Adam and Nicola for a second, and so I just want to give a little example, and I'm going to use some audience interaction for this, because I'm going to ask the audience to, so that is you, to give us two triggers. Now, you say a trigger, and we choose the ones that we like the most. Now, a trigger could be anything. Let me just clarify this. It could be an image. It could be a sound. So in that case, for instance, it was those paintings. But it could be a colour. It could be a taste. Whenever I taste some sort of something, I get this obsession. So it could be anything, yeah? And in a way, the wackiest, the better. So the dark being a trigger is less interesting than, for instance, say that I don't know, the taste of something yogurt-like. So that's an interesting trigger. Do you see? Because then you can start to imagine something different. So some offers. We need some offers. Oysters. I like that. Sponges. Oysters, sponges. Okay. Something else.
Engine oil.
Engine oil. Nice. Okay. Engine oil. Okay. Good. Something else. Socks.
Sharp corners.
Sharp corners. I like that. Okay. So we got sharp corners, oysters, sponge, engine oil, electrical switches. Okay, you choose. Engine oil. Sponge. Lovely. I like the sponge. I'll do my own sponge. Right. Okay. So now, just to give you an idea, they're going to start by telling and imagine, and just to put this in context. You may ask, so why don't we use their actual triggers? Well, first of all, because I don't work on the basis that everybody needs to experience OCD to be part of the company. But also, I think it's important to say. It's also important to say that by using imaginary ones, it allows your theatrical mind to start to kick in. So you see what that was. Nicola, you see an opera singer, and Adam, a dancer. You see how we use two different disciplines to explore that initial concept. And so what they do is they start to improvise on that idea of the trigger. They come up with an idea of how the trigger leads to their own an imaginary obsession, and then to an imaginary compulsion. And at some point they'll start to stylize it using their own discipline.
It's not so much to do with just everyday kitchen sponges. It's more to do with natural sea sponges that are completely full with holes, which is a weird concept. And just this object with all its apertures makes me think that I have weaknesses, and if I'm too open to the world with all my senses, I might be completely invaded from the outside. Whenever I see a natural sponge somewhere, it happens more and more rarely, luckily. I need to cover all my means of communication with the world. So I need to cover my eyes, my mouth, my ears mainly. And this way, I might have a chance to remain whole.
I remember the caretaker at school more than anything. I think that's really what started it off. I don't know if you ever find that the caretaker at school is always a little bit of a shifty character. Doesn't really talk much, just kind of like removes himself, does his thing. I mean, great worker and everything, but I remember him seeing this very like had long straggly hair, oil on his skin, and he had this kind of really pungent, sickly smell. I don't know what it was. Maybe it was engine oil, but it was kind of. I remember having this really kind of repulsive, kind of stomach-churning feeling whenever he passed in the playground. And I remember with my mum, she was always a complete clean freak, so she'd wash us all the time, and she'd always, she'd make sure we'd have baths every night, and was using a certain type of soap so we were really clean. I've kind of been brought up with this kind of feeling that I have to be clean. And that
if I cannot see you,
so it takes it somewhere else. So I have to make sure that I have to do the rubbing the hands, make sure that my hands are really, really clean. I go through each finger and right through to the nails as well. Can you smell that?
If I cannot hear you,
It's just really twisting inside.
if I cannot see you, not see you, then you are not there. And if I don't do it,
I've done that, then I know that I'm really clean. So I've checked every area in the lines in the skin and under the fingernails, so I know that that's right, because I've done it in that order that many times. It's like looking at a kind of like a 3D microscope, we're kind of looking at every kind of detail. And if I do, that's the most efficient way that I can check that.
And remain in this safe place.
But as you can see, it starts from something quite random, and then they start to create a story. And as we started to select which triggers will determine which story, then the more the script itself will develop. But the script, it was a really important point to say, is that my script always develops as a result of the performance, rather than simply as a separate thing that I'll do or in my own time, if you like. Okay, now which leads quite nicely to the story of Judas. I was going to say, can we get all the characters to actually recreate the picture? Right, there you go, so you see the picture. So the story is basically this. There's a boy called Judas that at some point is taught by his teacher that Judas Caesar had lots of different lovers and also was then killed. And this conjures up in his own mind these obsessive, intrusive thoughts about Judas Caesar, a random figure. Really, I have to stress there, we've chosen Judas Caesar as a random figure, that it just happens in Judas's brain to become the center of all the different taboos, sexual, violent, blah blah blah, whatever it is. It's all to do with Julius Caesar. Now the granny starts to see that Julius is more and more triggered by this idea of Julius Caesar, and he starts to have these compulsions, strange compulsions, and therefore takes Julius to the priest. Except that when the priest randomly says that the famous passage of the gospel about rendering unto Caesar what belongs to Caesar and unto God what belongs to God, at that, the fact that he says that starts to conjure up the image that maybe Judas might be seduced by the priest. And so then, as Judas gets more and more triggered by all these ideas, his friend Brutus starts to try to help him, except that the more he helps him, the more we start to see that he himself has his own world of obsessive thoughts. And in fact, what is the film that we've got now is just the first part of what will increasingly become the story of the whole cast, as they're all cross-contaminated by different obsessions. One of the things I was going to show you just now is how we get into character. So this is bearing in mind that we've got our characters know now the background to their story. I would then ask the characters to use this simple sequence. You think of your character, you visualize your character, then you think of your character's breath. You allow the breath to suddenly, to gradually inform your body language, and from the body language to the voice. Now, bearing in mind that this presumes that we've done the research behind, so this is not something that we would do right in the first rehearsal. But I just thought it would be an interesting process to share. So that's what we do now. So I'm going to talk through it as we do it, and for this we'll have a lovely Ivan to accompany this. So first of all, I'm going to ask the performers to be neutral, not in character, maybe to close their eyes. And as you close your eyes, you start to visualize a character and the story of a character. And as you visualize the story of a character, you start to see how your character relates to other people, how your character walks, what type of body language a character has, but you're still still. And gradually, you start to embody your character's breath. So you start to imagine how your character can breathe. It's a subtle change. Nobody else will notice it except for yourself. But it feels different. It feels different. And the breath starts to inform the way you see your body and the way your body language works. And you start to inhabit that. And with your body language come a series of gestures or gestural patterns or things that your character does. And start to open your eyes. Maybe voice comes out. Maybe you're talking to yourself. You may want to move in the space. Showing some little strategies there. Now, this leads me to a bit of design ideas, and we'll talk through this. So these designs, by the way, all these drawings are by Nadia. Now, did you want to tell us a little bit about what inspired you for the design of this?
Mainly, it was a couple of Fellini films, Satyricon and Amarcord, where, I don't know if you know Fellini films, but they have a lot of these incredible very highly stylized dreamlike sequences, which are great inspiration for the idea of intrusive thoughts. And so, basically, the general highly stylized idea is from that, but actually this started life as an idea for a live performance. It was never supposed to be a film in the beginning. Yeah. And we were gonna have 4 massive screens. They were going to talk to the audience was going to be in the middle. Screens were going to talk to each other. We were going to hang out washing so it was a massive staged thing using lots of space and lots of ideas. And as we started to rationalise it, and it became a film, we started to rationalise everything, so including the design. I wanted to make the design of I wanted to create a stage language where the aesthetic choices were really specific and really simple, so that actually that meant that we could really highly stylize what there was. So the costumes and the set. And so, for example, a really specific choice was to use red as a sort of physical manifestation of this psychological pressure that Julius is still feeling, and the red in the costume builds up to the final scene at the end. We also minimised the set to the point where it just became drawing, so you can see like the cross is when you're in the church, the blackboard is when the kids are at school, etc. So really everything was really minimised so that the characters and the narrative could really shine.
And I suppose it's important, exactly leading from that I suppose we didn't want it to become, again, a cinema experience in a sort of, it's not a theatre company attempting their first short film as much as it's a theatre company creating through film the essence of a live experience, basically. So, and that's why it's specific in the film that it should look like it's filmed in a theatrical studio with theatre lighting, etc.
Yeah, I think one thing that I've been saying about it is that the idea was to restage a stage idea as a film rather than
exactly.
a film.
Yes, definitely. And which leads to one last little performance trigger by the performers, after which we're going to tell a couple more things, and then we're going to have a little break. So can I just say thank you very much for those of you that are standing through this, because I know how I mean, I'm standing myself, but I'm kind of moving as well. And for those of you that are standing still, that's always but I'm young. So, now, this next improvisation is, so as we start to develop these characters, we start to get more confident about the way these characters sound, the way they look, the way they move, and then the type of rehearsal that we do is basically to give them a very random context. So in this next improvisation, if you can all come on stage, so imagine the characters all, and now the random, by the way, the random context needs to be really random, and it does not get included in the script. That's a really important point, because it's about testing ideas. So in this case, we're imagining that the characters are all waiting for a train. So all waiting for in a train station, and during their waiting time, maybe the one of the characters has a confession to make. Let's see.
And what kind of thoughts?
What kind of thoughts, Father? What kind of thoughts?
Stop it. Stay still. Stop making mess. What are you looking at? Are you fine? Yes, good. We are fine.
Yes.
You just wait. Okay. And do your business. Don't get into adult things. It's not proper. Just wait. Did you do something? What did you do? What did you tell him? You did something. What are you laughing at me? Julius. Oh. Julius.
Tell me more about your thoughts.
Is it really necessary?
You don't have to, but you may.
Yes, Father, I think I should. So, when I was lying in my bed, I began to have these visions.
What kind of visions did you have?
Some visions, some visions.
About our Savior,
What Savior?
Jesus Christ.
Father, I had visions about you being together. Intimate.
Julius, stop it. What is it? Leave him.
It's always different. Ivan, do you want to tell us a little bit about the music, by the way?
Extremely briefly, the score is really based on 4 or 5 main themes, which I'll give you here. I chose rather an obvious route for the OCD theme, which was the pulsing. The but then everything springs from there. So you have the second theme, which is an expanded pulsing theme, and it's interestingly the idea of 33, which is the number that Julius counts to. I've chosen 33 beats, so it's 3 groups of 3, which makes 9, and a group of 2. 11 times 3 makes 33. So it's 2, 2, 3, 3, 2, 3, and then a group of 2. So you've got that. You've always got that idea of the 33. And then there's a theme which arises, and it really came through the words Julius Caesar, which just is Julius Caesar, and that appears at a number of moments, and whenever someone, for instance the priest, mentions Julius Caesar, suddenly that theme enters into the otherwise very melancholy or peaceful theme of the priest, which is that feeling of how you feel inside when you first walk into a church with its high ceilings and its incense. So, and the last theme, is there another theme? I think it's all based on those themes really and intertwined. And then there's, the last theme is the waltz, which is really Brutus's thing, if you like, his cheeky thing. And that's, now I've explained, you can hear it again and you'll see how they interact.
Absolutely. It's, do you know, I have to say that even listening to it now, I'm just thinking, yes, of course. It's a collaborative project, and therefore there's the great thing about it is that you as a collaborator discover new things about it as it develops. So to finish with, I'm just going to just really say just one last word about what comes next for Julius. What comes next both as a project and both tonight. As a project, it will keep developing up until at least June 2013, and in that period we'll extend the film into 2 acts or chapters, this being chapter 1 or act 1. Then, as we'll present it to the audience, we'll experiment both with ways of presenting it purely as a film, and also with ways to integrate live performances, which for in terms of today's evening, basically means that we're going to show you later on. We'll have a little break now. I think everybody needs it, and you can have another glass of wine, and after that, we'll all gather in the courtyard, and we're just going to go to show you something we've made for you today. It's uniquely made for Juilliard. You will not see for this gallery, so you will not see it anywhere else. And so I know the excitement is going, I'm sure. And but this is really important because the reason why it's made uniquely for this gallery for Juilliard is because we only use the building as it is. That's why you see that there'll be a couple of surprises there. And this is just to show you, an important point is that the live performance it's deliberately not intended to give you more of the story. It gives you more of the characters. You see in the live performance that you're about to see after the break a little clue as to where the next chapter of Julius is going towards. And bearing in mind that we still don't know exactly ourselves, and that's why we need to test it with the different ideas.